She feels as if she physically cannot get the words out. She feels tape over her lips. She feels like anything she were to say would cause something in her life to slip. She's muted. Was there a certain time in your life you wrote this?
I remember writing that poem, but it was kind of written in sections. I didn't just sit and write it all in one. I remember writing the beginning of it, and then I dedicated to, but I kind of wanted the intro to start like to anyone who also experiences everything you're going to read in the book. Like, this is for you. But yeah, I remember I wrote this. It was about 2 years ago when I first started working on all of this, and that came together throughout the process. That one kind of kick-started like what the message I wanted of the book to be, and that's why I wanted the microphone to be a focus about how I want people who feel like they don't have a voice to be able to be heard. So
Yeah. It's like a mic is like the antithesis of someone who never wants to speak up. Like you don't even want to speak up to people, not to talk about it when having your voice amplified. So I would ask, what was that like? How did you feel inside those times? Was it quiet? Was it lonely? Was it haunting? Or was it just a longing for more? What was it for you?
I think it was frustrating to feel like I had stuff that I wanted to say, and because of fear of being intimidated by whatever the reasonings would be, I held back until, as I got older, realizing like that's really selfish. If you have something that you can offer to encourage somebody or to help them through something, why would you restrain that from them, or not offer that because you're afraid? So I think when I recognized that, or was able to act upon that, that's when the way I saw it shifted. But in the beginning, yeah, it was just a lot of like, well, that's like how it says, I've lived a lifetime of this. Like, I'm not that old, but a lot of my life I've felt like that. I felt shy and I felt afraid, and I kept silent, whether it was, you know, saying something that needed to be heard to a family member, or just being willing to make yourself be uncomfortable to help somebody else. So
Awesome. So, just looking through the book, there are like 5 sections of this, and that first section was titled Needed, and then the following section after that then becomes perception. Right after Muted, we go into um, how you start to look at yourself and look at the world, and there are many verses in there I looked at that just shows you use words like kept out of sight or not being seen, you know, like how people be like, oh, I wish I was a fly on the wall.
yeah.
This was literally that was literally you, in all of that. But right up to that point becomes perception. Like there was this sudden shift in how you saw things. Was there something that triggered that, you'd say?
I think kind of ties back to what I was saying. I think the more that it was hard, but the more that I was willing to get uncomfortable or put myself in situations that I normally never would, I began to see like there was a need for stuff like that. There was
Hmm.
other people who could relate, maybe in different ways, but kind of back to the same root of out of fear we hold back from doing things. And I think when I recognized that, like just having conversations and making connections with other people, I think it did change a lot of how I perceived myself. And that was kind of the start. And then how do I perceive others, and how am I going to fix this so I don't just continue to feel like I'm just a fly on the wall, just there and not ever really able to share what I have to offer. So
I'm going to read from the section Perception, and this poem is titled Parts You Didn't See. People know me, but do they really know me? I don't think many are privy to this part of me. It's always been their part that needs to break, but only seems to tear. Why was I chosen to feel this way? Yet, I always knew there was a purpose beyond these difficult days. This isn't a new side of me, just the parts you didn't see. Between why was I chosen to feel this way and yet I always knew there was a purpose. I feel like there's just a lot in there that I'd like you to go into. how that shift went from a why to there is purpose in this?
I think, I don't know how to explain it, but everybody I feel like has something that from a young age as you get older, it's like this is something that's just been there. Like it could be music, mine was writing. There's all different things, but you just know it's almost like throughout life, if you try to ignore it, like you can't escape that kind of calling that you have. So for me, since I was really little, like I mean like 5 or 6 years old, I don't remember a ton of things, but I do remember like laying in bed, I would cry a lot of nights because I felt like this burden for people. And it sounds weird to say because like I was so young, but I couldn't, it just continued to be like that. So whenever things would come up, like there was just this heaviness that I had for others. And I saw like things that I would see, adults going through in my life or friends or whatever it may have been. And I would have conversations with them. I was always a little like mom and too mature for my age, but I remember just having conversations with like my grandma or my aunt or whatever cousin. And I remember sometimes I would share, like at the time I had been writing just stuff for fun, and they would read things and they would start crying. And that really touched my heart. And I was like, that, you don't help people for your benefit, but when you do help people in the time while doing it, you're also blessed by knowing you could encourage. Like that's an encouragement to me. So when I would do that, I felt blessed being able to in some way minister, whether it's just me saying like, hey, like you're not crazy for feeling that way, or hey, like I wrote this, I don't know if this would help, but I'd love for you to read this because I know what you're going through, or something like that. So I think when that shift came also, it's like this is bigger than you. Your purpose and your calling is bigger than being stuck in your own box or letting, that fear get in the way. So I think that was a huge thing, just like seeing how when you were willing to put yourself out there, how it could help others. And the part about I always knew there was a purpose, I would say like there's a lot more to that, but I would say the start of it was this book. This book was me acting on, if you really believe that and feel that way, you need to do something like put out a book, do something vulnerable, and be willing to show people if they're also going through that, you can inspire them hopefully through, acting on what you're trying to share with others. So
And do you remember anything you wrote early on in those days? Remember any lines, any poems from back then? Something that may have stuck with you and just made a huge impact with whoever you shared it with then?
I feel like the earliest memory I can remember as far as like the message that came into the book, there was always a audible message. Like there was always the message of the speaking up. So when I started preparing the book and like trying to edit it, I never done anything like that and put it all together. I saw the common message that I knew it wanted to be something that would help people, but I wasn't sure what do I want the focus of the book to be. And I decided, I was like, I want the title to be Audible because I am becoming audible by putting this out. And then after a while working, I'm like, it's not, something's not fully done. So I was like, someone had offered the suggestion of adding becoming, and I added becoming audible. And I feel like that was kind of the kickstart to, as I look back at old poems I'd written for the book, I was like, that's what it is. Like you are continuing to work on that. It's not like it's not just audible, like able to be heard, but you want to become audible and then continue to, share things with others. So the earliest thing I remember, a poem that I remember writing, it's actually in the last chapter. It's called Give Me a Minute. And that poem, there's a lot of poems that I wrote because like they would just come to mind lines and I would start writing, or I maybe just wanted to write and got ideas for it. That poem, there's a few poems in the book that I remember where I was, what I was doing when it came to me. And that poem, I was in my room one night watching a movie, and the movie was like all this stuff going on in this family, and I felt bad. Like it was just, I don't even know if it was a true story or not, but I remember I had paused it when it was over, and I was just kind of sitting there thinking, and the lines for that poem came to me, and that like inspired a lot of like, this is also going to be a message of the book. Like there's a lot more in store for you. You just have to give it a minute before it takes off. So
Thank you for that. And then from perception, your book then segues into renovations. When I think renovations, I think of all these DIY shows, HGTV, Joanna Gaines and the brothers, and just tearing down stuff. And then you see this like rundown building being transformed into this gorgeous, gorgeous property that people now bid, or the family comes back in and they're excited. You know, the concept of renovations. But when we talk about it in the context of becoming audible, I want to ask, what were those steps like for you when it came to renovations? What changed? What moved around? What got reoriented for you?
I think it was a lot of self-reflection and being like, okay, what you need to first, if you want to make change and create a change, you need to recognize like what the root of the issue is. So what is holding me back from moving forward in my calling. um, I just, for me, like, it sounds simple, but it really was just like putting myself out there, being like times when I'd be uncomfortable or scared, like speaking up in those moments or saying something that needs to be heard. Even if it means, like maybe losing a friend, or but sometimes things just need to be said and not everyone's willing to say it. And renovations, I like what you said about the whole, like, they tear things down. Of course, I'm trying to relate it to a person, but sometimes it can mean you might need to give up everything and say, if this is going to continue to hold me back in my calling, I'm going to have to sacrifice like what means more to me, like doing or staying where I'm comfortable or putting myself out there and helping others. And so uh, that could mean like you give up friendships, relationships, whatever that might look like in your life. But renovating, like, I'm willing to tear it all apart to rebuild and create something new.
I'm going to read from that section of renovations, and this poem is titled Speak Up. It says, "You've lost your voice and people have hurt you, and you don't always know what to say. You don't speak up enough about what bothers you, and then life gets in the way. It is time to be reflective, time to have a new perspective. It's time to speak up, not to win an argument or to prove a point. You have been affected, but it's time to get back and get connected." More often than not, even as a person, you tend to brush things under and like, oh, I'm not just going to deal with this. I'll get over it. I don't want to make a big deal. I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to bring attention to myself. But then things fester and never ends well. So for this poem and in this time and in this place, what would you say to someone who's reading this part of the book?
I'd say stop making excuses. Like, if you know you need to fix something, no matter how hard it's going to be, like, it's worth doing. You don't know what the outcome would be, but it's worth starting. And it starts with you, speaking up. Like, you have to be willing to do that. Yeah, it's time to be reflective and have a new perspective. Like, you reflect and do self-reflection, and how am I going to change my perspective on how I continue to allow things to go in my life that might be, barriers to what I want in my future.
What are some practical things we can do then? What are things we can do on a daily basis to actively speak up?
I think we should pay attention to our surroundings. I feel like a lot of times, people say, oh, just be kind, it's free. And that's true. But sometimes people miss things that are right there and miss opportunities. You could go to the grocery store and you could see somebody, maybe just, you could tell they're going through a hard time, or that you hear someone crying over the phone, like, and noticing it and just saying, there's a difference between like, oh, I feel bad, I hope everything's okay, and walking away, saying, oh, waiting for them to be finished and going over and say, hey, introduce yourself, maybe say like, just talk to them, just be kind to them, and that can go a long way. So I think really paying attention to your surroundings, who you surround yourself with, also your circle. If you're around a bunch of people that are negative, or making you doubt yourself, like, you are going to continue to feel silenced and to feel like you're not worth anything or you can't speak up. So surrounding yourself with people who are going to encourage you to not do that, and just be other, iron sharpens iron, another person to just encourage you, like, to get there, and just always, like, both be encouragement to each other. That's really important. Like, to ever think that you have it all figured out or you can do it all by yourself. Like, that's not the case. Like, we are people who are meant to be in community. And when we, like, some people, I know me personally, like, I'm stubborn and I've been stubborn and been like, no, I got it, I could do it myself. But that's not always, we need people and people need us. So you have to, kind of let go of your pride and surround yourself around good people who will help you and you can help them, both be strengths to each other. And also, yeah, just paying attention to your surroundings and how maybe people that get dismissed or not noticed, you can go and you can recognize them.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And then after that section, just two more. We'll close. We'll come to the section on vision. Um, when people hear that word, it's thrown around a lot on social media. Oh, I have a vision board. Oh, it's. I have beef with that, but we're not going to go into that because the focus is on becoming audible. But when it comes to vision, I read each poem and I could just hear your tone change. It went far, we had come a long way from the voice of a tape on her lips to someone who's saying, I'm here, I'm now, and I have this, and I want to share it. And I think the crowning poem for me in the section Vision was the one you titled Limitless. It says, I know the plans I have for you, and they hold no limit. Before you see them, it could take a minute. My limit is not your limit. Are you willing to pivot? He wants to grow you, mold you into more. Don't limit what he has in store. Your story will be more. I think that's amazing. And I read that and I thought, there's more. And I'm directing that question to you now to say, when you put those words down, did you feel excitement? Was there hope? Or genuinely, what were you expecting the reader to get from these words?
Yeah, I felt like I have ideas of things I want to accomplish in my future. And whenever I wrote that, that's how there was this excitement because it's like the more that you put yourself out there, there is no, if you're willing to leave the box and get out of your own head, there is more in store for you. Like, and you don't even know what that means. That could mean something way bigger than you can even imagine on your own. So I think I wanted to share that with my readers too. Like, there's more for you, and there's no limit on what you're gonna accomplish or what you can do. So yeah, I was excited when I remember writing that one. I was sitting in my room on my floor on my computer editing that piece, and I remember I was like, yeah, this is what I want to share. Like, this is how I feel, and I want others to read this and also feel that way.
And have you seen that happen for you ever since?
Oh, for sure. I think it's just I'm still in the beginning stages of, a very early author and putting this out, but there's already been so many connections that I've made for maybe future projects, and that's been really cool. Like, I'm really excited to see, maybe where it will go. I have ideas, but you never know. Like, it could turn into something bigger than, like I said, you can even think of on your own. And I think, like, sometimes we can blame our lack of purpose on others. Like, we want to find the thing that's going to make us feel inspired or be able to be impactful. And when we allow our surroundings to kind of, like, sometimes it's easy to be in a bad mental state or be around just stuff that makes you feel like you're not excited for anything, or what, that you have something that you can offer, but you're like, I don't know how to get from point A to point B. So you kind of just stay, down in your, like, maybe around some of the things that make life feel sad, or around all of that stuff that's not gonna get you anywhere. And so I think whenever you can, like, set those things aside, and, like, you have to take what you have right now and use those opportunities, even if they're small. Don't just let, your circumstances be what keeps you stagnant.
Thank you for that. I remember reading this and I thought, I better not be limiting what he has for me, because it's so easy to fall back into old patterns and lose sight of what's in front of you. And that's why just this section being vision just makes it forward looking. There's more, but you have to reach for it, but first you have to be aware of it. Thank you. And then in the last section, we come up to what's next. I believe this is the beginning of bigger and greater things of how God's going to use you. But from you as the author, what's next?
Well, from what we were just talking about with limitless, I guess I can't really answer that question right now because I'm not sure. Like I said, I have ideas and dreams and goals, but I think just continuing to, put yourself out there, love others, love yourself, and just see what could happen. Um, yeah, that chapter is Answer the Call. And, I want people to know like they are worth something. I want people to help if they want to be a part, join me on let's all create the change together. Let's all work on ourselves and work on, being more kind or being more helpful or being more willing to get uncomfortable and, answer your calling. So whatever you feel called to, go and go and walk in that.
So talk to me about Create the Change. What's that about?
So, Create the Change is actually a brand that I'm trying to build up. And that idea came to me years ago. I mean, probably, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. I just, I thought of it and I started making little mock up logos of it. And I knew in the future I wanted to do something with it. I did that a lot though. I had a lot of ideas for like maybe some future business ideas, but that was the only one that really stuck with me. Like that, I was like, that I want to turn that into something. So then, you know, fast forward to a couple years later, and the spark for I want to publish something comes, and I start writing it. And with the speaking up message, I feel like the Create the Change tied into that. And so I made that a huge part of the book. On every page, on one of the pages, you'll see it says Create the Change at the top. And so, yeah, I'm trying to build up a brand of Create the Change. And the first product that I launched on the brand was this book. So yeah, I'm not sure what's in store for that. I have tons of ideas for that too, but that was Create the Change is kind of the kickstart to becoming Audible.
So I'm going to read the poem and then I'm given an opportunity to say any final statements you want to make. But I wanted to read this poem that's titled Create the Change. It says, you have the ability to create a change that will remain. We tend to base our life on how many accept us or how many reject us. When you start to share what's on your heart, don't let anyone add or take away from what you have to say. I've knocked and you've opened. Close the doors I could no longer go in. There comes a time when he will close them because he knows there are places you can't grow in. Change is coming that will cause a shifting. Use your gifting, leave your mark. Create a change that will cause a spark. Talk to us about that.
I feel like that poem is I want you there's something to look forward to. There's something to look forward to that you can be the spark, that you leave the spark, you can leave it everywhere you go by being kind, by putting yourself out there. But Create the Change it's bigger than you. And it's create means to bring something into existence. So create like you're starting with nothing basically, and you're inspiring people. I wanted to inspire people with that poem. Like there's who knows what's next for you, but like you have the ability to create a change that will remain. Maybe you're the person that can, help a family member that feels like they have nobody. Or maybe you're the person that can bring your friend out of depression, or maybe like everyone has an ability to help create a change. And so, yeah, I wanted that to kind of be almost like it's like a future, like exciting. Like I want it to be an exciting poem when you read it. Like you have the ability to do that, and then see what happens with it and where it will go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your heart and being so vulnerable and just giving the world this beautiful gift. Um, what's one thing you say to someone who just got this book and hasn't started?
I would say I'd love for you to read it, and I think that there is a message in there for you. Maybe you won't relate to the first chapter, maybe you'll relate to the third chapter. I think that there's a message in there for every single reader. And yeah, I'd love for everyone who gets their hands on it to read it through. I would love to hear their feedback on it. And yeah, just see maybe how that can shift things in your own personal life and what you're going to do. Hopefully, it will inspire you by the time you're to the end of it to also help create a change.
Awesome. I will wrap this up by reading one of the very last poems in the book, and it's titled My Wish for You. My wish for you is that you will answer this call. Do not let it ring. Don't allow any earthly thing to keep letting you fall. Hold on to your gifts. Be careful who you share your dream with. He has been preparing this new chapter all along for you. He's at your door knocking. waiting for you to let him through. I hope this time has been awesome. Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for sharing this with us.